Hello, everybody. This is Ben White with Ben Talks Talent, and we are back. And today in the Ben Talks Talent conversation, we have Kenya. Now, Kenya is a fractional leader who helps business professionals transform their business. Kenya, how are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I am doing great. It has been a busy week, but we're nearing the end. So I'm doing good. No complaints.
Awesome, awesome.
Good. So I've got some questions. I want to jump right in because I always find these conversations with fractional leaders so interesting. For those of you watching this now in the future, fractional leaders, and Kenya can probably speak to this worlds better than me, but basically they come in and they help business professionals with different components of their business, and they do it on a fractional basis, meaning they can serve many different companies and help them up level their processes, help them transform different parts of their business to be more efficient. So I just want to tee it up to you first and foremost. You are a fractional leader, you are a transformation artist. Who is it that would benefit from knowing you?
Sure, that's a good question. I certainly focus on small to medium businesses, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. Certainly, if you're in an early stage of your startup, or in some cases, I've worked with businesses that are trying to get ready for venture capital. So there's a lot of work, sometimes that goes into that. So any organizational or team that's certainly finding themselves in a space where they may be wearing 20 different hats, or they don't have enough time to figure out how do I do something next. They know what they want to do, but it's like the how part. So you sometimes have to bring in someone or a micro team to be able to help you get to that how and to move through that and strategize on how you go from point A to point B. So that's the best way to kind of figure out how I can be part of that process.
Yeah. I feel like people out there, when they listen to that, they know if that's them, right?
Yeah.
If they're like listening, they go 20 different hats. Yeah, that's me. I've been doing that. I think they kind of get that and they can
Yeah.
understand, yeah, that's the position I'm in. I'm
Hmm.
doing a lot, but I don't know if I'm doing any of it particularly well, and I might need help. That's the type of person who might want to reach out to you to help scale their business.
That's correct. And a lot of
Okay.
times I find like a lot of businesses say, okay, I want that, but I don't know where to go, or I may not have the cost. And that's why a fractional component is important, because you get the same benefit of if, you brought in someone full time, but you get it at a fractional and still get the same impact within that budget. So it's important to
Yeah.
look at it that way too.
Yeah, I think it's a solution that maybe not as many people know about it, but gosh, it can be so beneficial. If you're scaling a company, if you're growing, and you're CEO, and maybe you don't have the budget for a full-time person to come
Mhm.
in who
Right.
can really elevate you operationally, but maybe you could afford one-fifth of that person and still
Correct.
receive most of the benefit. Like, how helpful is that? I would think very. Um, so one of the things you and I talked about in our first conversation prior to this one was continuous improvement. And we talked about it a little bit and nerded out a little bit because I like continuous improvement conceptually, but you're like a professional at it. And one of the things that you mentioned is you were very passionate about it and you feel like it's not as prominent as it once was. So I
Right.
would love to let you just talk on that a little bit. Why do you think that is? And you know, and feel free to just talk about continuous improvement in
Sure,
general.
sure. Awesome. So just a little bit about me as a Lean Six Sigma, certified Lean Six Sigma green belt and a lean practitioner. I have certainly, I'm not going to try to date my, tell how old I really am, but like over 2 decades of continuous improvement experience from driving organizational excellence. And I always find that people, process, and tools are the most important elements in continuous improvement, and people being the most significant. And I like to always say managing several projects and being a global leader, leading teams in 6 countries, doing all these various things is always sometimes get to the heart of the people, and that people analytics is important. I'll just tell you really quick a short story how I got so passionate was I was tasked with one of my projects to find $70 million in 3 years because there was revenue leakage. I walked into a team of 7. They had found only $690,000 and they were 9 months into the project. And I certainly began to panic because I was like,
Yeah,
what are we doing? How do we do this? But all I knew was that we had to get it done. So I embraced a lot of the Lean Six Sigma philosophy, Shingeo, Shingu, saying improvement is doing something you've never done before. So I took that team of 7, grew it to 100. We found $260 million in 5 years on 15% of the company's base. So we did that by just continuous improvement, that mindset. You want to remove bottlenecks because that's what it's designed for, and optimize on workflows. So when I started to do that, that's when I got very passionate about continuous improvement. But that company was so large and we were doing that, they were not looking at it in that philosophy. They were not trying to work through it in that way. It was, well, is it money missing? Well, there is money missing, but there is a way that you have to constantly look at that to know, how do I improve? How do I make it better so that I can become a market leader, so I can deliver and have better quality? Having that mindset will certainly usher in those strategies, usher in a new philosophy. The other thing about continuous improvement, and it removes the keyhole effect, I like to call, because you look through a keyhole, you only see a small view, right? So
Yeah.
this is what most organizations, they have that keyhole syndrome. But if you introduce continuous improvement, you're forced to open the door, because there's a vulnerable trust element, and you got to look at everybody's perspective from end to end. And that's why I think I've been so passionate about it, because you
Yeah.
come in and saying, how do people see the process? How are they executing it? How are the tools facilitating that process? Once you identify those defects and those breaks, you can turn it around and really.
Yeah. Well, I imagine somebody else who was passionate about it was the person who was able to realize $260 million in cost savings. That would turn just about anybody pretty
Yes.
passionate about the benefits and what you can experience. I want to dive deeper because you said a lot of really interesting and important things there. And um, what made you so passionate about continuous improvement? I mean, I hear that, and that's an amazing impact on the business, and that's great. But I'd love to know, dig down just a bit deeper and understand your origin story. Like, what made you at first go, "I'm very interested in this, and I want to pursue knowledge in this area."
I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you what it was. I actually got fired from a job. I was walked out.
Okay.
Didn't even know. They're like, thank you for your time, so to speak. I was doing everything, hitting the goals, but it was, I think I was doing something. I wasn't really being authentically myself. So
Okay.
when I learned about understanding who I am in my role and actually what I wanted to do. Really wanted to be a people leader and a process leader. So I think for me, losing my job was a reality check for me to really identify and try to redefine or really truly define myself. So going through reading and really saying, what type of leader am I? Where do I really fit in this space? And then once I said, oh, that's me, that's when I started to have that. I think the most important thing is making that connection with the human, with the person, and letting them know that they do matter. You are part of what we're doing in the company. You do make us better. Being able to make that connection and have people have that passion and drive, that's when I knew that I had what I needed to do. And constantly asking them, what is it working? What isn't working? What can we do better? What we do today doesn't mean we have to do tomorrow. And I think that's what got me into continuous improvement, and just seeing from a Six Sigma standpoint of knowing how you're running. I'm at a 2 Sigma and a 3 Sigma, knowing where my defects are. How do I quickly fix those? People can help you identify that, and they know how to make it better because they're living it. Just listen. And that's what I did. And that's how I got him. That's how I became passionate about it. Losing my.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's kind of crazy advice, but like you, I've also lost a job, and like I found it to be like such a helpful thing long term.
Yes.
So like it's like kind of weird career advice to say, hey, lose a job and see how it impacts you. But I would say like maybe the other way to view it is if you're someone who has recently lost a job and
Mhm.
you're watching this, I would say just understand that that can be a catalyst for significant personal improvement if you react the right way.
Right.
So much in life is what happens to us, but so much more in life is how do we respond to it?
Exactly.
Um, so
Yes.
that's really interesting. One of the things I loved about our first conversation is you talked about being future proof and
Mhm.
future ready.
Yes.
And I don't think there's ever been a time in the history of the world in which that is more important than it is today.
Yes.
I want you to free speak on that a little bit because what part of what you do is you help companies and you advise them on being future proof and future ready. And I think so many companies are woefully unprepared for the avalanche of change that is headed their way. Talk about being future proof and future ready for a little bit.
Sure. No problem. So working in various projects, you kind of find this element of like rigid. I'm gonna use that word, where a
Yeah.
process, some things are, I don't want to say like archaic, but you keep building on the same old philosophy or principles. You're trying to introduce something new, but that underlying foundation is so rigid that it starts to crumble or starts to be very wavy. I think you have to have that ability to say, okay, I'm keep moving like this. I'm not having that right level of stability. I'm not getting into the space I want to. I'm not taking on those market shares. You sometimes have to go through all those layers and see that I have this wobbly thing happening. It's because of what I'm building everything on. When you want to say, I need to be able to be agile enough, there's new consumers in the market. They're completely changing. This new generation is changing everything almost overnight. I mean, the way that they go to, the way they want go to market done, the things that they expect, the high level of quality and deliver that they demand from day one, and they expect
Yeah.
it all the way through from end to end. You can't be wobbly inside of your foundation. You can't be rigid with it. So I try to help organizations or teams say, okay, you got to remove that. You have to be willing to say, I'm going to do something new, something different. And you want to be able to keep yourself ahead of the game. And in order to do that, you have to constantly look at, what am I doing? How am I doing it? You have to be able to compile your data. You have to be able to analyze it. You have to be able to eliminate things very quickly. And it's okay to let it go. I know you may love that spreadsheet, but it's okay to let it go, right? It's okay to just say, I don't need that anymore, and introduce something new, usher in something new. It may work, it may not work, but as long as you're constantly willing to do something you've never done before, you'll keep yourself ahead of the game. You just got to remove that wobbly bridge that you're swinging on, and it's okay. It's okay to let it go. Sometimes you just have to tell people, say, it's okay. We can let it go.
Yeah.
Do something new or
Yeah,
different.
change is hard,
Yeah,
but change is very often incredibly necessary.
it is.
Um,
It is.
yeah, good. Well, this has been great. I feel like it's been a really quick moving and free flowing conversation. The one last question I ask all my guests at the end of this is, what is something you are passionate about outside of work?
Well, kind of thought about that, but I'll tell something a lot of people may not know is that I love horror movies. I will,
Oh, okay.
doesn't matter if it's gore slash, doesn't matter. I love a good horror movie. And so
Okay.
when I get a free time, I get in my wish list of like Halloween is coming, right? So I got like all these horror movies I'm ready.
Yeah.
So that is my thing. I will sit and watch like 4 or 5 horror movies back to back, and I'll critique them like, this wasn't a good slasher.
Okay.
So I'm
Well,
the
we're
one
like right
on
in
it.
your season right now. Like this is the time. This is like
I love
horror movie like month. So like that's great. Do you it's always hard to pick like a favorite movie, but if you had to like if someone's like, I want to watch like a really good horror film, do you have a recommendation or two for people to go out and check one out?
Oh, I love the Changeling. Like that series is good. Changeling. My
Okay.
all-time favorite is probably Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, but then H2O, like the new generation. That one was one of my favorites. So with
Okay.
Matthew McConaughey, it's a good slasher,
Okay.
like horror. But if you don't like that much gore, I would say maybe Skeleton Key or 13 Ghosts. That was also a good kind of like
Okay.
kind of messing with your mind, kind of horror.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I love horror movies too, actually. And one of my favorites is Hereditary.
Oh,
Um
yes.
that
Okay.
that Yeah, yeah, and you know, Midsummer, not everybody loves it, but low key, pretty good. I dig his style of
Yeah.
movie. So,
A little different, but I
um,
like that. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, Kenya, thank you so much. If you are a business owner and you are looking for someone to help, looking for someone to help you with continuous improvement or be future ready, feel free to reach out to Kenya. Kenya, how can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Certainly, Kenya Hoover is here, but you can always find me at Kenya at Infinite Technical Services because it's always infinite. So you can find me there, but find me on LinkedIn, and then we can connect and we'll see what we can do to get this party started for sure to improve
All
your.
right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kenya.
Thank you.